Data from Statistics South Africa showed on Wednesday that headline consumer inflation rose for the second month in a row in March to 7.1% year-on-year from 7% in February. Now, analysts had predicted a drop to 6.9%. On a month-on-month basis, consumer inflation rose to 1% from 0.7%. Inflation has remained stubbornly high in Africa's most industrialized economy since peaking in July 2022 at 7.8%, leading to a run of interest rate hikes from the central bank. At its last meeting in March, the South African Reserve Bank surprised analysts with a larger than anticipated 50 basis point hike. Now, to discuss this, we're joined by Gabriel Crouse. He's an economic analyst, and he's joining us from Johannesburg, South Africa. Gabriel, thank you so much for your time here. But I want us to look at the figures we are seeing so far. It just inched up slightly to 7.1%. Analysts had predicted 6.9%. What do you think turned on the analyst prediction that caused the increase?
Yeah, so I think, as you said, the margins are small. It is worse than expected, but only slightly worse. I think analysts were hopeful that the central bank, doing these rate hikes, making it more expensive to borrow money, after already having increased the prime lending rate repeatedly for the last 2 years, kind of at every opportunity, that would constrict the amount of money flowing around the economy, and that in turn would reduce inflation. It's had less of a positive effect in the short run than expected. But I think that actually the smart money knew that it wouldn't have such a quick effect. Its effect is going to be slightly longer term. On the downward side, the reason I think in part that we're seeing these inflation numbers coming out worse than anticipated is in part because of pressures at the bottom of the food chain. And when I say food chain, I'm literally talking about food. Some of the worst drivers of inflation this round and the last few rounds from Stats SA have been food price inflation. Looking at eggs, milk, bread, things like that, up 13, 14%, worse than expected. If you look at a staple like sunflower oil, which is what most working class and unemployed people are using to cook their food, that's up roughly 50% year on year, a major increase that's really pinching people in the pockets. And that in part is because of a kind of strange combination of depressed consumer demand locally because of worse unemployment numbers, worse economic performance numbers, and depressed local production numbers coming out of the floods, coming out of broken ports, making it hard to import and export, broken rail and road, all of those logistics making it more difficult to move goods around. It's all adding up to pretty bad news for poor South Africans more than anyone else, actually.
So how much of an effect will this have on ordinary citizens who, like you have said, are already reeling under the high inflation? They are already feeling the pinch of Eskom load shedding and petrol price rises. What are we going to see as far as the effect is concerned?
I think the situation is really serious. We made the call in March that South Africa is looking at a winter of discontent. We have the world's highest unemployment rate on record. We have 4.7 million children estimated to be suffering from stunted growth as a result of malnutrition. We have, as far as I can tell, the worst average opinion on is the country going in a better direction or worse direction, according to Ipsos, which is an international pollster over the last 5 years. Since Cyril Ramaphosa became president, we've had the worst average in the world of 80 to 90% of the population saying we're going in a wrong direction. I think if you add those factors together and more, the consumer price inflation, it looks very much to me like as we ease into winter, what's bound to happen is two things. More electricity demand, because that is a primary way for people to try to stay warm, and less staple food coming from the subsistence agricultural part of the economy. In traditionally South Africa, the riot times coming around July. It's coming around winter. And so we think that the powder keg is getting drier. There are serious national security risks on the horizon. And if you look at Bloomberg, Financial Times, various international publications, they've taken up our warnings and repeated them, I think, because of how serious the situation seems to be.
Right. Now, let's do a quick one on the rand. It has been quite stable for the past days. Can we say that this could bring some relief to consumers?
It's definitely good news in the short run. The rand is, depending on the econometrics measures you use, just about the most volatile currency in the world. So its stability in the face of various scandals we've seen in the last week, in the face of the president signing in what the employment minister described as more aggressive race law, in the face of pretty disturbing news about our load shedding prospects going into the winter, a nuclear power station having an emergency shutdown here in Cape Town because of some water leakage in the pump or something. For all of that to come at the same time as a stable rand outlook in this period is a great relief. It means that consumers can rely, at least for this little time, on easier import-exports. But I say this following warning. We have seen it before that sometimes financial players are moving their accounts quickly and quietly in a fashion that kind of produces an artificial impression of a stable rand before a bit of a fall. So we're all hoping that it stays like this, but not necessarily too confident that it will.
Gabriel, thank you so much for your time. We'll leave it here for now.
Thank you.